Hello, I've got kind of a weird video today, so bear with me. Normally, I separate my eyeshadows by color and I combine all of my eyeshadows, but I decided to take apart my shadows brand by brand and split what I've depotted from palettes versus what I've specifically bought as single shadows. So today I'm going to be going through all of the brands that I've purchased single shadows from, tell you how many I have in total, and how many orders I've placed from each brand. I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of show you which brands I have the most from, which brands I've made the most purchases from, and also kind of just tell you whether or not these are brands that I will be purchasing from again in the future. So if that sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and just keep on watching and subscribe. So as you can see here, we're starting off with my Luxie Beauty collection. This is by far my biggest collection of single shadows from one brand, and it's the brand that I've placed the most orders from as well. I actually have one order still out from Luxie. I placed an order on Black Friday and I'm hoping that those shadows are in soon. It's the last Black Friday order I'm waiting on, and I've got a few videos planned around that, so stay tuned. As of right now, I've placed 7 orders from Luxie and I have 75 shadows here in front of me. If you count the Black Friday order, it's 8 orders, and that will bring me to a total of 88 shadows. So definitely a pretty large Luxie collection. I'm not going to swatch all of these shadows here today, but I do have a lot of brand videos and I'm coming out with more in the future. All of these Luxie shadows have been swatched at one point or another, so check out my brand overview playlist if you want swatches of things. As seen by the fact that I have an order still out from Luxie, I definitely plan on shopping from the brand in the future. I think that the reason I've shopped from them so much in comparison to other brands is, one, I typically get collections now when they launch, because I know Luxie can sometimes have stock issues, and so I've learned just to get things as soon as they come out. I don't wait for sales or things like that, whereas other brands I normally will wait for like their annual sale to make a purchase. I also think that I buy more from Luxie, one, because it is more affordable. I'm okay to pay full price for Luxie shadows because they're like $3 to $3.50, depending on at what point I bought them, because they have raised their prices a little bit. Another thing is that the shipping is affordable. Luxie shipping is less than $5 and it gets to me pretty quickly because they are located in the Midwest, as am I. And so I think for all of those reasons, also I just enjoy the brand truly. And I do a lot of videos, so I feel like all of that kind of combined makes it a brand that I shop from quite a bit, as seen by my very large collection. Since Luxie is my biggest collection, I did decide to store that one separately. Now we're going to be getting into palettes, like my really large palettes that I have multiple brands stored in right now. So first up at the very top, from this pink all the way down to this kind of neutral shimmer, this is Terra Moons. And for Terra Moons, I've placed 6 orders. This is my second most ordered from brand, just a little bit lower than Luxie. I have a lot less shadows though. I have 43 shadows from Terra Moons, and I don't have any outstanding orders at this time, although I did place a very small one for Black Friday. I would say the reason that I have so many Terra Moons orders is because formula-wise, like when it comes to the more expensive special shades, Terra Moons has been really consistently my favorite up until this point, and I like their mattes. You'll notice Terra Moons is one of the only brands that I have matte shadows from, and it's because they have such cool colors and I like the formula. So I think that that adds to the total number. And I'm not 100% sure why I've ordered so much. I feel like Terra Moons is one that they do sales pretty frequently. They'll do like a 20% off with a lot of their new releases. And so I feel like I oftentimes take advantage of that. And typically I place smaller orders, but more frequently. It's definitely a brand that's still on my radar. I really do enjoy the formula, but they have had a pretty substantial price hike on all of their shadows. And so I feel like I'm a little bit more apprehensive to order from Terra Moons in the future. Also, at this point, I have most of the $8 and $6 shadows that I really want. And so I'm mostly just looking out for new releases to see if they have any of the more affordable shadows that I may be interested in. So I don't expect to be ordering from Terra Moons quite as much in the future. Below that, we have Shine by SD. It starts at this iridescent shadow, goes all the way through into a little tiny bit of this fourth row. So you can see I've got a little bit less Shine by SD than I do Terra Moons. That is coming in at 41 shadows, and I have placed 4 orders in total from Shine by SD. I will say my first 2 orders were actually pretty small, I'd say, maybe like 5 shadows each-ish. It was that third order that I really went in and I got quite a bit from the brand. Also, a lot of these iridescent shades, 6 of these came in a pre-built palette that, you know, you can pop out. So I guess they're not technically single shadows, but I think of them that way because Shine by SD is typically such a single shadow oriented brand. Now that I've tried a lot of Shine by SD, I will say there are still shadows that I would totally purchase from the brand. For me, this brand can get pretty expensive pretty quickly, and the shipping is what really stops me from ordering more frequently from the brand. That 4th order I did, I actually had a $40 coupon to use, and so that's why I placed that last order after my really big one. Don't worry, I'll talk about that more in my upcoming brand overview about Shine by SD, so stay tuned for that and swatches of all of these shadows. I would order from Shine by SD again. I think it would need to be a sale though. I don't know if I would pay full price just because these shadows can be pretty dang pricey, especially with shipping. Shipping from Shine by SD is in the double digits, and so for me that just kind of holds me back from ordering, which is I think is why I placed such a large order, because I wanted to get every Shine by SD shadow I wanted, so that way I did not have to pay for shipping for them again. And then last at the bottom here, we have my Copacetic Cosmetics collection. I have ordered from Copacetic 4 times as well, but I do have a little bit less of Copacetic shadows than I do of Shine by SD. I've got 34 Copacetic shadows. I really do like Copacetic. I just placed an order for Black Friday, a very small one. I think I got like 3 or 4 shadows. So it definitely is a brand that is on my radar, and part of that is the affordability of this brand. They do sales quite a bit, and their multi-chromes can get pretty cheap when they do them. This is a little bit of a spoiler for an upcoming video, but I'll show it to you here. I said I wasn't going to do swatches, but I lied, because do you see up here, Flare Star by Terra Moons? Very pretty shadow, $17.95 from Terra Moons, and this one doesn't go on sale very often, or like they'll exclude it from sales, or it'll be 10% off or whatever, right? This down here is Centennial Wheel by Copacetic. Look at those. Are those not like the same exact shade? This one, typically $13, and I got it on sale for $9. I did not mean to get this spot on of a dupe. You know, I typically try to avoid doing that if possible, but I'm kind of glad I discovered it because I can pass it along to you guys and hopefully help you out so that way you can get the cheaper option, because Copacetic has the most affordable multi-chromes and they're really good quality. It's got a little bit less of a base. It's kind of stuck on my hand a little bit more, but with a glitter glue and some patience, I mean, they're literally like the same exact shadow. It's crazy. With this palette, we're starting to get into my shadow collections that are a little bit smaller. Down here at the bottom is the largest by far out of this group. It starts at this mauve matte shadow and then goes all the way down to this purple shimmer shadow. This is all from Sydney Grace. I really enjoyed the Sydney Grace matte formula. I honestly was surprised when I put them all together how many shimmers I do have from the brand. This is a very different type of shimmer than most other indie shimmers that really focus on the sparkle. These definitely focus much more on the shine. They are very, very pretty though, and they're just a little bit different than everything else. Overall, I have 31 shadows from Sydney Grace, and those 31 shadows have been purchased over 3 orders. So even though I have a very similar total number of shadows between Copacetic and Sydney Grace, I have placed one less Sydney Grace order. So that shows I'm definitely getting more at one time from Sydney Grace than I am from Copacetic. And I feel like the reason for that is because Sydney Grace does less sales than Copacetic does, it seems like. So I really try to wait for that Christmas and July sale. Those are 2 of the orders that I've made are from 2 different Christmas and July sales. And then the third came from the Mel Thompson bundle that they did for like the retro glam palette. That was pretty recent, and those shadows were a really good deal. Here's something interesting. Here, this blue all the way down to this shimmery green, this is from Menagerie, which I feel like you can tell from the different pan shapes. You can tell I placed 1 order while they still had the square pans, and then I've placed 2 orders from the circle pans. So I've placed 3 orders all together. I think that's really interesting because for Menagerie, I only have 15 shadows compared to Sydney Grace, where I have 31 shadows with 3 orders. So I've placed double the amount of Sydney Grace compared to Menagerie. And I think that the reason for that is Sydney Grace is more affordable than Menagerie. I haven't really been able to get a lot of Menagerie singles on sale, and they don't do sales very often, and when they do, stuff sells out really fast, and so I feel like as a result, I've just gotten a little bit less. I also think it has something to do with the mattes. People say that Menagerie mattes stain really bad. I haven't had that experience, but I think that that has kind of drawn me away from the more vivid shades of mattes that Menagerie has overall. And I definitely like the shimmer formula from Sydney Grace better than Menagerie. So I think that's where those differences are starting to come into play with the order size. I just realized I haven't been saying whether or not I would order from the brand again in the future. Sydney Grace, heck yeah, would definitely order. Probably will make an order in the next Christmas and July if I feel like there are shades that I want to add that I don't have already. But it's not that I'm like seeking out new shades at this point from Sydney Grace. I'm pretty happy with the range that I have from their collection. Menagerie, I'm not seeking out at this point. I did just place a 3 shadow order for Black Friday, and I am happy to have those and kind of fill out spaces that I felt like I was missing. But beyond that, it's just not a brand that's super intriguing to me at this point. I was really considering the Claws palette from them because I freaking love cats. If you don't know, I have 3 cats and I'm a total cat person. I love the art and I love the fact that I could take out the shadows and then use it as a magnetic palette. But the color story inside was so wonky, I couldn't do it. I just was like, I don't need those shadows. And that's kind of how I feel about the brand overall right now. Up above this is Clionadh. I have placed 2 Clionadh orders and I have a total of 15 shadows. So the same amount as Menagerie in 3 orders, which means I've done larger Clionadh orders. And I think that the reason I don't have more Clionadh orders is 1, the international shipping is pretty expensive. Clionagh's located in Canada. And 2, I had a bad experience my first time ordering from Clionadh, and I feel like it turned me off from the brand, and it really took them releasing those expansion shades for me to be willing to give them another try. I will say I have thoroughly enjoyed the expansion shadows that I got, and it definitely has put this brand more on my radar, but it's so expensive. I don't think I would pay for any of them full price. It would have to be a sale, and since they don't do sales very often, I think I'll probably be waiting on any Clionadh if I did want some for quite a while. Above that is Pretties for Your Face. Pretties for Your Face, I've placed 2 orders and I have 11 shadows. I actually placed both of those orders quite a while ago. I didn't place any orders from Pretties for Your Face in 2022. It honestly, quality-wise, it's not my favorite brand. I know some people really do enjoy the Pretties for Your Face formula. I'm just not one of them, and so it's not a brand on my radar at this point. Their shadows, price-wise, end up being pretty close to Luxie prices, but if I'm going to place an order for more affordable shadows, I'm just going to order from Luxie because I like their formulas a little bit more. So I'm happy with the ones I have, some of them more so than others, but at this point, it's just not a brand on my radar if I'm being completely honest. Up above that, these are all from Davina. I've gotten 10 Davina shadows and I got those all through one order. I've only placed the one, and I mentioned this in my Davina brand overview video, but honestly, it's not a brand on my radar very much just because it's so hard to purchase from them that it just makes it a less desirable brand for me, although I do enjoy the shades that I have, and they are really unique, but I feel like slowly other brands have been getting some of these more unique Davina type shadows into their own kind of collections. Up above that is Touch of Glam. I only placed 1 Touch of Glam order. I have 7 shadows, but I will say 2 of those were gifted to me. I bought 5 on my own. They were gifted to me by a friend, not by the brand. Oh my gosh, not at all. But I would say I'm not the biggest Touch of Glam person. Their special shades are very pretty. I know I said I wasn't going to swatch, who am I? But I just want to show you. Look at the quality of those. They're very silky, very, very dimensional. I love them. I really do. But these shadows are like $20 each, I feel like. I don't remember that off the top of my head, but they were really expensive compared to some of their more affordable formulas are not the same. Do you see how like chunky and kind of patchy those are? There's definitely a difference in quality between the two of these types of formulas, and it's just such a wild card that I don't know if I'm willing to take the risk. And the ones that are more consistently good, I don't want to pay that much. I can get really beautiful shadows from other brands for less money, and I can get them much faster because it took me like 4 months to get my Touch of Glam order, and I am all about waiting and like, you know, the marshmallow test where you wait and get 2 or whatever. But at a certain point, it does become, that was a third of the year that it took for me to get my collection, and I got 5 shadows. So it just felt like it wasn't super worth it to me personally. So I probably won't purchase from the brand again. Up at the very top, we have Glam Shop. I purchased 10 shadows, but one of them shattered and I couldn't fix it. And so right now I have 9. I've only made 1 order, and talk about expensive shipping. This is coming from Poland, and so it is very expensive to ship to the US. And I feel like since I made my order in 2021, it's only gotten more expensive. And because of that, it's not a brand on my radar. Honestly, none of the Glam Shop shadows are my favorite. And so it's not only the shipping, but also formula-wise, it's just not my favorite brand personally. Now we're getting into my smallest brand collections. We'll go ahead and start up at the top this time. This is all from Give Me Glow in this top row. I've placed 2 orders from the brand for shadows. I have 8 shadows in total, and what I mean when I say I've placed 2 orders for shadows. It's because all of the palettes that you've been seeing, these large palettes, are all from Give Me Glow, and I love them. They are the most affordable and the largest palettes that I've seen on the market, and they're great quality. So that's where most of my Give Me Glow purchasing has come from. Actually, my second order, the one that I'm including for shadows, I only got 1 shadow, and then I got some palettes. So that shows you, for me, Give Me Glow's standout product is definitely the palettes. The shadows are fine, as seen by the fact that I've done multiple palette orders without adding on any shadows. I feel like that kind of shows, for me, it's just not a brand that's super on my radar for their shadows. They have a ton of really awesome colors and a lot of options, but their shimmers to me are nothing super special, and the mattes aren't my favorite formula. I also don't love the 37mm pans, just because it gets harder to store them when you're comparing it to all my 26mm pans. So for all those reasons, I don't think it's a brand I'm going to be purchasing shadows from in the future. Below that, I've got my JD Glow shadows. I have 8 of them in total, and I've placed 2 orders from the brand. I don't picture myself placing orders from the brand in the future though. As I mentioned before, the 37mm pans aren't my favorite, but on top of that, JD Glow had made some pretty problematic endorsements or statements over the summer in regards to women's right to choose. I am pro-choice. I believe that women's autonomy is really important, and letting them be in charge of their own decisions is what's best. And if you have to stop supporting me because of that, I totally respect that. That is part of why I don't support JD Glow at this point. I also have had some stories told to me from my friends in the beauty community about bad customer service and just kind of some bad vibes from JD Glow, and so for all of that, it's not a brand that I'm looking at this point. Beneath that, I have my little tiny Clarity Cosmetics order. There were 1.4 shades here, but one of them just kind of dissolved into nothing, so that one is now no longer with us. I really do enjoy the ones that I still have, and because of that, it is a brand that is slightly on my radar because they've been talking about switching to 26mm pans. I feel like they've been talking about that for a long time, but they just did an announcement that they're trying to put most of their stock on sale so that way they can start producing the smaller pans. And if they do that, I might give them a second glance. I might try out a few just to see if I have better experience. You know, right now 25% of what I've tried from Clarity has dissolved into nothingness. So I'd give them another chance, you know, but until then, I'm not purchasing the 37mm pans, regardless of how inexpensive they make them. I have 2 shadows here from Sugar Drizzle Polish. They also do palettes, and I have had a palette that I've depotted, but we're not including that because those aren't single shadows. These 2, I think they're okay. They are not worth the price. I think that these are like $16 on, like, without any sales going on, and I have shades that I like better for less money, so this is a brand that I'm not super interested in buying single shadows from in the future. Love Luxe Beauty is below that. I had 4 shadows, but the one sucked so bad I couldn't keep it. I got rid of it. I will have a video on that at some point, so stay tuned. I've only placed 1 order from the brand. I saw them on Instagram and I thought that looked really, really beautiful in their pictures. Not the same in person. I will say, out of all of the brands I've tried single shadows from, Love Luxe Beauty is my least favorite by far. I would not purchase again. So if that tells you my thoughts, there you go. Beneath that is Glaminatrix. I have 3 single shadows from them that I've placed from 1 order, where I also bought the Nearly Neutral palette, I think it's called, or Nearly Natural, something like that. But these are the 3 single shadows that I decided to buy from them. I don't think I would place another single shadow order from them. Their shadows are fine. You know, these single shadows, they're not bad. They're not my favorite. But the shipping from Australia and just in general, the price point of their shadows is pretty expensive, and so I think it would keep me from the brand in the future. Down at the very bottom here, this last row down here, this is Colourpop, and some of these are old. Oh my gosh. Colourpop was like my introduction to makeup a long time ago. And I did a build your own palette. Back when they did those all the time and they would do sales on them, that was one of my first eyeshadow palettes, and I built my own. So I had 12 initially, and then I got 2 more because they were on sale at one point or another. And so now in total, I have 10 left because I've decluttered a few that were really needed to go. I've placed more than 2 orders from Colourpop for sure, but I've placed 2 orders with single shadows. So these 10 come from 2 different orders, and I'm not looking at Colourpop single shadows. I honestly don't even know if they sell them at this point, but the indie space has such better shadows than Colourpop that it's just not on my radar. I will say though, Snake Eyes, really, really pretty. Up at the top right here, we've got one lone Sephora shadow, which I'm counting as a single shadow because they are single shadows and they can be removed from their little single shadow packaging, and they're magnetic. So I think it counts. This is pretty new if you saw my recent Sephora haul. I thought it was fine. It did come broken, and someone in the comments said that theirs did too, so it seems like they're really fragile. I got this for really cheap, but I think normally they're like $9 a piece, which is pretty dang steep. That's more expensive than most of the indie brands I've shown you today. So because of that, I would not purchase Sephora eyeshadows if they weren't super cheap and I could get them for like $3 each maybe. Even then, I'm not sure because it did come broken. So underneath that, this is all from Adept. I placed 1 order from Adept when they were still selling single shadows, which I don't think that they do anymore. I placed an order for 5. One of them was really bad, and so I got rid of it. So now I have 4, and honestly, I don't love the quality of the Adept shadows. The only one that really stands out to me is this one, which is their Diamond formula, but I don't know if I would buy a palette from Adept. They had some ableism issues earlier in the year, which they did address after, you know, kind of what seemed like a panicked response and a really bad response, if we're being honest. But I don't know. It just left a really bad taste in my mouth, and so it's just not a brand on my radar. Underneath that is Nomad Cosmetics, who has started to sell some of their shadows as singles from their palettes. And I would get more Nomad. I've placed 1 order and I have 4. I really like the mattes. They're very, very punchy and really unique color-wise for my collection. The shimmer, not the best formula. I guess I'll do a tiny swatch really fast. But overall, I would purchase more mattes if there are colors that I feel like I don't have and they intrigue me and I feel like they would be a benefit to me. I might make a purchase, but I'm not seeking them out at this point. And then last but not least, we have Lethal, and I currently have 5 Lethal shadows. I had 6. I built a little 6-pan a long time ago. It's the only order I'd placed from the brand. I hated that one shadow though. Oh my god. You'll see it at some point. You'll see. But I actually placed an order from Lethal for Black Friday. It hasn't come in yet. It's on the way. It should be here pretty soon. And that was for a Build Your Own 9-pan because the shades were discounted. I got a few of the new ones, and the Build Your Own palette was discounted as on top of the discounted shadows, so it was pretty affordable. I actually had a video that I was going to show about building a palette from Lethal to stop myself from building a palette from Lethal, but I'm actually saving that footage and I'm waiting for my palette to come in to compare to what I had built and see if it's a good purchase. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. It'll make sense when it's in video form, hopefully. All that to say though, obviously this is a brand still on my radar. I'm not gonna lie though, I'm giving them a second chance right now because the first order didn't super impress me, but I'm willing to give it one more shot. And depending on how this next shot goes, it may be a brand that I completely write off, even though I do love their concepts and stuff. I think it's a cool brand, but quality-wise, it's not my favorite so far. We'll see how I feel after this order, but stay tuned. All right, well, that's all of the brands that I have tried and bought single shadows from. In total, it's 22 brands, which feels like a lot. And it's crazy because there are so many I don't have shadows from. Like the market is insane. So I hope that you found this helpful to hear what brands I've tried, how often I've tried them, how many shadows I've tried from them, and if I would try them again. If it was, again, I'll just throw it in there one more time. Subscribe if you liked this. There's a lot more content that I've made like this in the past, and a lot more is coming. So until I see you next time, I hope that you stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye!